is Matthew Jester. I'm making this video. This video is going to be called Breaking My Back. And I have a certificate of completion just showing that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. It's from Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And I have an introduction that I'll read very quickly. Please watch my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. I will leave a link to watch the video in the description. I will also leave additional links in the description of other relevant videos. I've been tortured and abused with hypnosis, and my ability to speak is being inhibited with hypnosis, which is why I have to read everything when I make videos. If you notice me stuttering, speaking slowly, being unable to speak clearly, or any other difficulty speaking like I am now, I explain in detail the specific methods and techniques that are being used to inhibit my ability to speak. In my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition, these issues speak and occur consistently in each of my videos, specifically within the first 3 minutes. The hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak is often very noticeable throughout my videos, and I will leave a list of the various hypnotic commands that are specifically being used to inhibit my ability to speak that can be recognized in my body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and speech patterns in the description. And let's see here. Since the hypnosis has been inhibiting my ability to speak during my videos, I will be raising one of my index fingers to indicate when the hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to speak without interrupting my videos. So moving on from that, the limbo hypnotic metaphor is about how low the hypnosis can make me go using coercive control by coercing me to behave against my own best interests, because it's like I'm bending over backwards for them. The back burner hypnotic metaphor is about cynically coercing me to put priorities on a back burner so that I wouldn't know what they were doing to abuse me and so that they could keep me from crying out for help. The concept being that as long as I was able to keep my head above water, then I wouldn't have to cry out for help or scream for help. They hypnotized me to act angry and to feel speaking was extremely physically strenuous whenever I resisted the hypnotic commands, and to feel angry whenever I ruined something they did to abuse me. I was hypnotized to inhibit my ability to speak until after I acted angrily, because if they couldn't completely inhibit my ability to speak, they could at least try to make me look crazy for it. I was also told that sounding sane while talking about being tortured and abused with hypnosis was breaking their backs, but if I sounded sane talking about most other things, or if I didn't sound sane talking about being tortured and abused with hypnosis, that it wouldn't be breaking their backs. Implying that this is the reason that they hypnotized me to feel back pain. Since I was causing them problems by talking about being tortured and abused, they told me that they needed to cause me more problems than I was able to cause them. I was also hypnotized to think that causing them problems was like twisting and grinding my spine, and that the vertebrae in my spine were grinding together as if grinding teeth together. I was told that since I wanted to put them in prison for abusing me, that helping me was, quote, breaking their backs, and that allowing me to do anything that would help me or benefit me was, quote, breaking their backs. The hypnotic metaphor pertains to me playing limbo underneath Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a method of coercive control, because the hypnosis is inhibiting me from fulfilling these needs. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs is portrayed in a pyramid diagram. So I'll go ahead and go over that pyramid diagram right now very quickly. Very briefly, I might add. So this is what it looks like. Just a standard like pyramid diagram, kind of like like say for example the food pyramid, right? Well, instead of like servings and everything along those lines, the way that this works is I'll go ahead and just read. So this is a popular psychological theory pertaining to motivations for behavior depicted in a pyramid diagram. The theory organizes a hierarchy of different motivations in 5 different categories. So that's what the pyramid diagram is about. Lowest category being physical needs, then security needs, then social needs, then esteem or ego needs, and then self-actualization needs. So to clarify, for example, let's see, the lowest levels in the hierarchy of needs are survival necessities, and as the needs ascend to the top levels in the hierarchy of needs, the needs become less and less necessary for survival. So it's kind of like you don't need them as much necessarily, like if you don't attain self-actualization, it's not going to literally kill you. But if you go without food, water, or sleep, you need that in order to survive. Eventually, sleep you will catch up on. But regardless of such, the bottom 4 levels are known as deficiency needs and primarily motivate behavior when experiencing a deficit in a need. For example, sleep. So I'll go ahead and show you real quickly the top line here where you can see it going straight across right here. These are your deficiency needs, the bottom 4, and then this is a growth need, right? So, sleep being an example of that. When you're deficient in sleep, that's when you have motivation to sleep. When you're not deficient in sleep, you don't have the motivation to sleep. If you're not thirsty, you don't have the motivation to drink water. If you're not hungry, you don't have the motivation to eat food. Very simple. Let's see. Gotta hurry. The motivation intensity varies on the severity of deficiency for the need. The motivation will subside when the need is satisfied. So I explained that, when after you sleep, you don't want to sleep anymore. You don't have the motivation for it. And the primary motivation will then be derived from the next deficit need in the hierarchy of needs. So let's say, for example, you're hungry. That will typically take priority as a physical need over like a security need, which would be like shelter, for example, right? Now, let's say, for example, a homeless and hungry person, right? Well, first they want to get fed for the most part, and then, general rule of thumb. And then after they're fed, they go up to the next level in the hierarchy, which would be like shelter, right? And then after they have shelter and they're fed, then, they might want to socialize more. And of course, there's, it's a general rule of thumb, meaning it's a very subjective, but they're just tendencies, not necessarily concrete rules of behavior. So, moving on here. This would escalate through the hierarchy of needs until all the needs are satisfied. Then the top level is known as a being or a growth need, and our focus will shift towards self-actualization when the lower level needs are satisfied. So self-actualization can be like religious needs, morality, spirituality. These are self-fulfillment needs. Creativity, philosophy, achieving potential, selflessness, honesty. Let's see. The top level is known as okay, I already described that. The lower level needs primarily initiate brain activity associated with survival in the amygdala. So, like shelter and food, thirst, sleep, things along those lines. Basic survival. Brain activity, and that's the amygdala for you, so like that, for example, in animals, most mammals will have the amygdala and the limbic system. Lizards actually only have the amygdala, so it's kind of like that fight or flight brain activity. Then moving on from that, let's see. The medial level needs primarily initiate brain activity associated with feelings and emotions in the limbic system. So that's going to be like your social and esteem needs. Social needs being like relationships, friendships, intimacy, family, sense of connection, the need for love, belonging, and then esteem or ego being like self-esteem, respect, status, recognition, strength, freedom, prestige, power. The opposite of a lot of those needs are also oppositional towards humility, for example. Although, not necessarily all of them. Kind of more like egotistical is oppositional towards humility. But, it's important to have self-esteem. It's important to have respect. And it's important to have, freedom and strength and all these types of things. Although oftentimes these are like the top of the pinnacle, of success for some very egotistical individuals. And then the higher level needs initiate brain activity associated with advanced cognitive processes and higher level thinking in the prefrontal cortex. So, for example, with animals, like other mammals like dogs, cats, birds, etc., they'll have the limbic system and the amygdala. So the fight or flight part of the brain, the survival part, parts of the brain, and then they'll have the emotional and feeling parts of the brain activity. But the higher level thinking, this is like responsible for, like, say for example, intellectual and academic tasks, or a majority of them. The ability to comprehend what religion is and what God is, for example, and that's where like a lot of the selfless and sacrificial behavior can come in. But just advanced concepts. So moving on from that, that's what separates humans from most other mammals, is the prefrontal cortex, by the way. Let's see here. So that's the concept here. Now, basically, the other concept being, like, let's say for example, your growth or self-actualization would be like, let's say, like charity. It can be a self-actualization need, right? It's also a very selfless behavior. So, charity or politics, right? So those could be like a self-actualization, as long as the political activity is sincere and genuine. So I mean, like, you wanted to be the person that, like, say for example, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, right? Well, I mean, that's more than just, like, he did that because he was being genuine. He sincerely wanted to help people. So he didn't do it for the image, like esteem or ego. He did it for self-actualization because he cared about them. So an example of that is, an example of what they're doing to me is by basically like starving me, depriving me of food and water and shelter. They're trying to get me to stop being political and self-actualizing. So that's the hierarchy of needs. Sorry to go off on the longer tangent there, but it was pretty relevant. Now next, since exposing the hypnosis being used to torture and abuse me became one of my survival needs, they were able to coerce me to neglect other needs and some survival needs by putting them on the back burner. So basically procrastinating like shelter needs, right? Filling out apartment applications as an example, because the hypnosis was endangering my life, and my life was dependent on exposing it. Similar concept to boiling a frog with a back burner aspect, right? Doing it cynically, which means very subtly and gradually. So similar concept to boiling a frog, because submerging a frog into boiling hot water will cause the frog to immediately jump out of the water, but if the frog is submerged into room temperature water and the heat is gradually increased to a boil over an extended period of time, then the frog won't notice the cynical changes in temperature. So the deficiencies of needs would gradually increase over time and become uncontrollable once they got to a boiling point. So for example, if I'm like, I've been staying in motels and putting the financial security and stability onto a back burner, eventually it would get to a boiling point, because then I wouldn't be able to afford to keep paying a nightly rate for a motel. So I'm staying in an Airbnb, which is like a nightly rental for a room in a person's house. So moving on from that, a little bit less expensive than a motel, but very similar concept. It's more expensive than I'm paying monthly for an apartment. So, like I said, submerging the frog into boiling hot water will cause the frog to immediately jump out of the water, but if the frog is submerged into room temperature water and the heat is gradually increased to a boil over an extended period of time, then the frog won't notice the cynical changes in temperature. So the deficiencies of needs would gradually increase over time and become uncontrollable once they got to a boiling point. This was also a very cynical form of gaslighting. So pain relief was an unfulfilled need that I couldn't quickly resolve, because I was hypnotized to tense my muscles in my back to make cracking my back very difficult, because the excuse enabled them to discreetly and covertly abuse me. The need for pain relief is a very basic need in the hierarchy of needs, as a medical need or a health need. So that's going to be like under survival or security. just depending on how severe it is, to be honest with you. And, pain specifically was used as an excuse to conceal hypnotic speech inhibition and to conceal abuse. The motivation and priority to fulfill the need for pain relief was cue to increase and become more intense the more I attempted to meet important deadlines and complete important tasks until the need for pain relief was resolved. One very specific example of a hypnotic cue to feel pain relief. There we go. One very specific example of a hypnotic cue to feel back pain was to suddenly contract my back muscles and feel significant amounts of pain as soon as I brought my pencil to the page to write on while I was working. So, it was cued on and off. Like, as soon as I started writing, I would feel back pain. And as soon as I stopped writing, I would not feel back pain. The same thing with reading, for example. They do that to me too. The back burner, it's not painful to read or write. So that's what I mean. The back burner limbo hypnotic metaphor also referenced keeping me in a state of limbo where I would not be able to make significant amounts of progress and be unable to complete a task or project in order to move on to the next task or project. Similar to being in limbo or purgatory in between two different states awaiting to move on to the next state. So basically, I'm trying to make progress, but I'm not. The back burner limbo hypnotic metaphor was also a cynical demoralization attempt to lower my moral and ethical standards by attempting to coerce me to limbo underneath selfless needs and desires by coercively depriving me of survival needs, financially exploiting me, and alienating me from friends and family. So, to go ahead and allow you to understand the visual concept, right? The self-actualization of the political needs or whatever the case may be, right? Like political activity or even self-actualizing and exposing the criminal activity of my abusers. Which was also a survival need. But to prevent me from the political activity, there's this line here, right? Between between the growth needs and the deficiency needs. So self-actualization is the only growth need. The deficiency needs are, everything else. And I mean, there's variations of this hierarchy that have more levels for growth, but this is the simple one. Very simplified concept. So doesn't negate the accuracy necessarily, just less specific, less detailed. Now, by depriving me of food and all these other things, right, they would make it harder for me to be able to focus my attention on this, as well as it decreases motivation to self-actualize or, engage in political activity and, say, for example, petition, because, for example, the other needs have overwhelming motivations to be fulfilled. That's a form of abuse. That's scientific. That's a scientific explanation for how they did it too. So also, by the way, for example, some people will, and this is where demoralization comes in, right? With the story for Aladdin, right, where he steals bread to eat. Well, I mean, that is a concept of normally Aladdin wouldn't steal at all, right? But since he was hungry, he needed to survive, right? That physical need. The motivation to survive became greater than the motivation to be honest and moral. So then he stole the bread. Well, that's what they're basically trying to do to me, is demoralize me. They're very, very psychopathic, horrible people. So moving on from that, I need to hurry. Social isolation was used by coercing me to neglect maintaining healthy relationships with family and friends to prevent anyone from helping me adapt to the abuse, coercive control, and deficient needs. Hypnosis was used to financially exploit me by inhibiting my ability to speak in order to abusively prolong the deadlines for hypnosis being used to torture and abuse me. Because every single day I involuntarily extended the deadline was significant financial exploitation because I am renting a room on a nightly rate, and after over 75 days of involuntarily extending the deadlines has cost me nearly $3,000 from paying the rent for the room alone. Delaying deadlines was a discrete method of financial exploitation by consuming excessive amounts of my time, attention, and resources. Consuming my time was financial exploitation because every single day the deadline was delayed worsened my financial instability because it literally cost me money. The amount of attention consumed by exposing hypnosis being used to torture and abuse me was exploited by coercing me to neglect the relationships I have with my family and friends. So, instead of say for example, let's say, you talk to like a friend every day, right? Phone call. Like some people might call their mom every day, right? At 9 o'clock p.m. or something like that. Well, if a person is in survival mode, they might end up skipping that phone call for a few days, right? Well, that's what they did to me to an extreme to coerce me to, because my mom would be like up here on the priority list, but I'm just here basic survival, right? So, that's another form of coercive control, forcibly controlling my behaviors in life and making, limiting my options. So that it's so that since I have less options, right, to choose between, I have less control over the situation. Moving on here, hypnosis is inhibiting me. Let's see here. I was talking about social isolation. That was the sentence, I think. I was talking about the attention. Okay. The longer deficient needs are neglected, the more the motivation increases to resolve the neglected needs until the needs are resolved. So basically, like the longer you're deprived of sleep, right, the more tired you become, and the greater the motivation to sleep becomes. Same thing with food and water, right? Same concept. The more thirsty or hungry you become, the longer you go without, the more deficient you are. If deficient needs are neglected for too long, the motivation to resolve the needs can become overwhelming and demand immediate attention, which was exploited by diverting attention away from disclosing evidence. Separating me from my family and friends is part of the coercive control because they don't want anyone to help me resolve the problems they're coercively causing me. And it's easier to get away with abusing me without witnesses around because they don't want my family and friends to worry for my safety and or do anything to help me. Another aspect of the financial exploitation involved extorting me to neglect my needs and depleting my resources to resolve the deficient needs over an extended period of time so that all my neglected needs would become extremely deficient at the same time and simultaneously depleting all of my resources so that I would have insufficient resources to resolve my needs. The back pain was also cued specifically while writing as a method of distracting my conscious awareness so that I wouldn't notice the hypnosis inhibiting my handwriting, slowing my handwriting, and tensing the muscles in my back. I was hypnotized to feel the muscle tension and muscle pain was from hypnosis was euphoric, as if it was healthy, like how the muscle tension and muscle pain associated with weightlifting can be euphoric as a method of decreasing my resistance to the hypnotic command. I was also hypnotized to feel the muscle tension and muscle pain became more euphoric the less I resisted the hypnotic command. The slower I moved, the less I moved, and the more rigid and tense I became. I was also hypnotized to feel the muscle tension and muscle pain became less euphoric and more painful the more I resisted the hypnotic commands. The more I moved, the quicker I moved, and the quicker I attempted to speak, write, read, articulate, and finish tasks. The muscle tension, so basically they tried to, they hypnotized me to feel euphoria and pain, right? To try to make me move robotic, move rigidly, right? Be very tense. And for example, the faster I would try to write, I was hypnotized to tense up more. The faster I tried to write, so that instead of writing any faster, I would just tense up more. You know what I mean? That's very deliberate and extremely abusive. So, anyways, that hypnosis is inhibiting me right now. The slower I moved, the less I moved, and the more rigid and intense I became. I was also hypnotized to feel the muscle tension and muscle pain became less euphoric and more painful. The more I resisted the hypnotic commands, the more I moved, the quicker I moved, and the quicker I attempted to speak, write, read, articulate, and finish tasks, so punishing me for all these things. The muscle tension, muscle pain, and other various hypnotic commands were intended to stop me from trying to incriminate my perpetrators, or at least slow me down enough to miss important deadlines that they weren't able to completely stop me. Let me see, I'm less than halfway done with this, and this is taking way too long. That's not good, that's not good. I was hypnotized to feel consistent mild pain in my back and to experience an increased severity of pain when I resisted hypnotic commands, because increasing the amount of pain was less noticeable than repeatedly surpassing the pain threshold. Decreasing euphoria and increasing dysphoria were more subtle and effective methods to influence behavior than using only pain as negative reinforcement, because too much pain resisting hypnotic commands would be too noticeable. I was also hypnotized to crinkle my nose, squint, and purse my lips. Mostly just squinting was the primary intention. And told that it was called a stink face. So I'll show you like something along those lines, but mostly just squinting is what they were trying to do and trying to make me do, coerce me to. The other aspects, that was kind of more of like a distraction and, to distract and entertain my conscious awareness with like kind of a story, and distract attention away from the eyes specifically by contracting the entire face. I was forced to, they called that the stink face. I was forced to smell an essential oil when I was hypnotized in Jordan Valley Medical Center's emergency room and told that it was aromatherapy to treat the eating disorder I developed after I witnessed my friend's murder, and that they made me make the stink face while smelling the essential oil because I was going to put them in prison for giving me therapy to conceal evidence that I witnessed my friend's murder, they called it the stink face because of how I was hypnotized to think my dead friend smelled fragrant before eating, and called me the stink-faced snitch. He smelled rather fragrant by the time I found him, and I developed an eating disorder, but not exactly from the smell specifically. It was moreover just from the concept. But regardless, the story I explained was actually a hypnotic metaphor to distract and entertain my conscious awareness, to get me to elicit the hypnotic command without questioning it or resisting it, because the stink face was actually used to cause wrinkles, dark circles, and bags to develop underneath my eyes. So to make me think that it was something else when it wasn't. To make me think that it was like me, like them admitting you caught us, right? No, they were just trying to make me develop bags under my eyes to discredit me. The hypnosis is really inhibiting me right now and it's consuming excessive amounts of my time. Let's see, I'll say that again. Sorry about that, I'm being tortured with hypnosis. The story I explained was actually a hypnotic metaphor to distract and entertain my conscious awareness, to get me to elicit hypnotic commands without questioning it or resisting it, because the stink face was actually used to cause wrinkles, dark circles, and bags to develop underneath my eyes to make me appear sleep deprived when I wasn't, and I was hypnotized to feel euphoria and to smell the olfactory hallucination, which is sense of smell, the smelling hallucination of the essential oil, when I was cued to make the stink face as a form of positive reinforcement to condition compliance and reduce resistance to the hypnotic command. Basically the story being with the stink face thing was like, they tried to coerce me to, or tried to trick me into doing it, because they tried to portray the impression that like I would do that because I cared about my friend, right? Like, you know, you guys can't do that to him, right? Well, in all reality, that was just to make me develop bags under my eyes, to try to make me look sleep deprived when I wasn't. The hypnotic commands were used to coerce me to miss important deadlines even if I was recording it. By increasing the severity of the muscle strain and muscle pain, the harder I tried to meet an important deadline so that even if I was exerting more effort, I wouldn't be making more progress. An example of this is being hypnotized to become more tense the faster I tried to write, speak, read, and articulate. Without writing, speaking, reading, or articulating any faster, I was also threatened that I had to think with my body instead of my mind, because the hypnosis would only allow me to think with my mind or with my body, and that I had to choose one or the other because I couldn't choose both. They threatened me that I shouldn't think too much with my mind or ask questions, like why they hypnotized me to do certain things, and that I shouldn't question it when they hypnotized me to do things, and just do what they hypnotized me to do, because as long as I thought with my body and did what feels good, then I would be okay and they wouldn't have any problems. They threatened that they were going to break my legs if I thought with my mind instead of with my body. And that my reproductive health would be like a comedy if I did. They threatened me for studying mentalism and hypnosis. Mentalism is it's kind of like magic tricks, like magicians, except these magicians will use actual psychological sciences, like say for example hypnosis and reading body language, various other things. That are a little bit neurolinguistic programming, and some other concepts that are a little bit more difficult to describe. Most people know what hypnosis is and body language, so instead of illusions, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, they're actually using psychological science to perform their magic tricks. So they can make you think of certain things or guess what you're thinking, basically like mind reading, they're magicians that use the actual psychological science to do things that appear to be magic. And hypnosis, because if I did, I would be like a brain with no body, because I would be mind-blowing women, because I wouldn't be able to be physically intimate with women. They also hypnotized me to feel like I was a floating brain with no body, as if I didn't have legs or a body. They threatened that thinking with my mind, They threatened that thinking with my mind, learning, studying, and speaking quickly with an extensive vocabulary... Sorry, the hypnosis isn't hitting me. With an extensive vocabulary was going to make me like Stephen Hawking, because he was in a wheelchair and was like a brain with no body. They compared my interactions with other people to cannabis, sativa, and indica, because I could either be a mind high or a body high. Sativa is like a mind high, indica is more of a body high. They told me that intellectual conversations, reading, learning, and studying were like mind highs, and that physical intimacy was like a body high, and that I couldn't be both. They threatened that if I was like Stephen Hawking, that I would be mind-blowing woman, because I would only be able to be a mind high instead of a body high. I was also specifically hypnotized to crack the small of my back in between my shoulder blades, and to think you can't be sexy for it whenever I cracked the small of my back. I was hypnotized to think that resisting hypnotic commands was like twisting and grinding my spine. I was also hypnotized to think that putting Donald Trump in prison was breaking their backs, and hypnotized to think that cracking the small of my back meant putting Donald Trump in prison. It wasn't a big deal, as a sarcastic insinuation implying how big of a deal Donald Trump actually is. The hypnotic command to experience excessive muscle tension and back pain was intended for more than just coercively controlling my behavior with operant conditioning and pain. It was also a form of intimidation to instill feelings of fear by causing a permanent injury to develop that was intended to decrease reproductive performance and make physical intimacy and intercourse painful. Now, I'm hypnotized to tense up, by the way, and to feel speaking is very strenuous now, because I'm trying to hurry. The excessive muscle tension from hypnosis caused a distorted posture and excessive amounts of pressure, twisting, cracking, and stretching of my spinal cord, which over a prolonged period of time can cause an injury to develop. Since hoping people and doing the right thing can be attractive, they threatened to harm my reproductive health give me organ failure, and give me sexually transmitted diseases for helping people and behaving morally as a method of decreasing motivation for helping people and behaving morally, because instead of making me more attractive, it would make me unattractive as a cynical form of demoralization. So basically, sometimes these things will be kind of like when you have like conflicting motivations, right? Like, for example, let's say if a person has an excess in money financially, right? They could donate money and it wouldn't even affect them. Then that's an example of like where they're able to self-actualize without any conflicting motivations here, right? Going the opposite direction. Now, for example, if you don't have enough money to donate to a charity, right? Or it puts a financial strain or burden on you. So then there's a conflicting motivation there, right? So let's say, for example, I can give the example where I had to donate money in order to save a young innocent child's life in Uganda in an orphanage, in order for him to receive malaria treatment. And I had to sacrifice shelter, right? So financial security and shelter in order to do that. So those were conflicting motivations, right? Because there is the motivation to do the right thing and to be moral, right? That was motivating me to donate the money, but at the same time there was the motivation to have shelter that was conflicting with that other motivation. So they're trying. So what they did was they were trying to make anything that I did that was moral or help to help people or selfless. They tried to make that extremely. They tried to make overwhelming motivations against that instead of where. Sorry, that hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to speak so much. Instead of for example, where I used to be able to spend the time just talking to a person and helping them through a problem, right? Maybe not necessarily giving them money, but just helping them. Well, they tried to take those types of behaviors and they threatened me for doing that, and to give me more motivations to not help people than I had motivations to help people. So they threatened that they were going to abuse me so much that I was going to look bad for helping people and doing the right thing, because I was going to make helping people and doing the right thing seem scary, and because I'd make people scared to help others and do the right thing. The harm to my reproductive health was intended to try to make me physically unattractive, to make it easier to control me as a form of coercive control by making it easier to isolate me from others, because they didn't want anyone to care about me, and they don't want anyone to interfere with them abusing me. In conclusion, the excessive muscle, so they don't want anyone to interfere with them abusing me, which is why they're isolating me from my family and friends. I wanted to repeat that. In conclusion, the excessive muscle tension and back pain was used to attempt to coerce me to make me bend over backwards, neglecting needs and limboing underneath neglected needs through intimidation and fear, by causing a cynical injury to begin developing social isolation and demoralization. I was hypnotized to feel like the nerves on the right side of my back were being pinched and twisted, and told that they called it the hypno twist, because I got on their nerves, and to think that the hypno twist also meant the sicko twist because they're sick and twisted. The hypnotic command to experience excessive muscle tension and back pain was a cynical technique to attempt to gradually cause me to develop a medical condition called kyphosis, also known as hunchback, by trying to coerce me to neglect my health concerns and put them on a back burner until I resolved other survival needs. This was also a method of slowing down my physical body movements by using excessively painful muscle tension to make my body movements rigid and robotic, and making me less limber and flexible. This hypnotic metaphor also connects to the cracking the case hypnotic metaphor and a nested loop of hypnotic metaphors. I'm going to get to that here in a bit. That's actually the next page. I was hypnotized to think cracking my spine meant cracking the case. I was hypnotized to think of the survival fluid. Sorry about that. I was hypnotized to think of the synovial fluid, which is the fluid that causes the cracking noises from cracking joints in between the vertebrae of your spine. Was like the chocolate coating that covered and cushioned the nuts and the cracking the case, hypnotic metaphor, because the synovial fluid acts as a cushion in between joints. I was also hypnotized to think that cracking my spine was like chewing cashews, and the cracking the case hypnotic metaphor because of the cracking sound they both make. I was also hypnotized to think that grinding my spine meant biting the bullet, and that causing permanent damage to my spine also meant biting the bullet because the biting is a metaphor for being hypnotized to inhibit my ability to speak, because the hypnosis was biting my tongue, being hypnotized to feel speaking, writing, and resisting hypnotic commands was so physically strenuous that it was like, hold on a second, let me reread that. The hypnosis is abusing me. I was also hypnotized to think that torturing me. I was also hypnotized to think that grinding my spine meant biting the bullet, and that causing permanent damage to my spine also meant biting the bullet, because the biting is a metaphor for being hypnotized to inhibit my ability to speak, because the hypnosis was biting my tongue. Being hypnotized to feel speaking, writing, and resisting hypnotic commands was so physically strenuous that it was like needing to grind my teeth, or like biting/grinding a bullet in between my teeth. I was also hypnotized to feel forcing the hypnosis to allow me to speak was like pulling teeth, and that biting the bullet meant forcing Joe Biden and Donald Trump to bite surgically implanted cyanide teeth so that they could avoid criminal punishment. By the way, the hypnosis distracted me from what I was reading, but I'm going to finish reading anyways. I was also hypnotized to think that going public about being abused with hypnosis was breaking their backs. See, I'm being tortured with hypnosis. This is sick. Alright, hold on just a second. There it is, I found it, good. So I'm being tortured and abused with hypnosis, but let me go ahead and read this. So this was a rather strange and unusual hypnotic suggestion. This is the cashew murder investigations, or cracking the case hypnotic metaphor. This was a rather strange and unusual hypnotic suggestion, but it also provides an excellent example of how they place hidden meanings underneath layers of hypnotic suggestions. After buying a large bag of cashews from 7-Eleven, I was hypnotized to imagine seeing a bald man eating a bag of chewy chocolate-covered raisins or peanuts in a movie theater. Watching a movie, while I was eating the cashews, and to imagine the bald man, sorry about that, I was hypnotized to actually burp to interrupt that sentence. Allow me to start over. After buying a large bag of cashews from 7-Eleven, I was hypnotized to imagine seeing a bald man while I was eating the cashews, and to imagine again that did that to me, okay. After buying a large bag of cashews from 7-Eleven, I was hypnotized to imagine seeing a bald man eating a bag of chocolate-covered raisins or peanuts in a movie theater watching a movie while I was eating the cashews, and to imagine the bald man as a Mormon eating a bag of chocolate-covered Mormons. And I was confused to the meaning of the hypnotic suggestion and had an unusual feeling there was a hidden meaning. Now, the reason for that is, I've met a lot of Mormons in the Mormon church, and they are very friendly and nice people, very pleasant to interact with. So, the metaphor, right, where, I was hypnotized to think that there were Mormons in this hypnotic metaphor, was kind of like the chocolate coating, because, it was a cushion, it was like, a sensor, or, something that wasn't scary, something that was friendly and pleasant, right? Let's see. So moving on from that. The chocolate-covered peanuts were basically like chocolate-covered Mormons, right? You know, in a like little bit of a metaphor, right? After several hours and an emphasized feeling of a cashew cracking in between my teeth, the perceived sensation of the cashews being covered in a chewy chocolate dissipated, leaving behind a crunch so hard it was compared to, quote, biting a bullet from a desert eagle, and I was hypnotized to imagine the cashews looking like an eagle's beak, because they're curved. The chocolate covering represented Mormons as a cover or censor concealing a hidden meaning, and I was also hypnotized to imagine the bald guy's head had some form of correlation to a bald eagle, which served as a subconscious reminder that wasn't revealed, a subconscious meaning. That wasn't revealed until... Okay, let me read that again. The chocolate covering... See, this is what the hypnosis does to make it so that it's difficult for me to make videos and for people to understand what I'm saying. The hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to speak. The chocolate covering represented Mormons as a cover or a censor concealing a hidden meaning, and I was also hypnotized to imagine the bald guy's head had some form of correlation to a bald eagle, which served as a subconscious reminder that wasn't revealed until the chocolate covering was removed from my imagination. Subconscious reminder or meaning. The cashew cracking represented cracking the case, and the chocolate-covered Mormons changed to murders without the chocolate covering, because the first syllable of the word Mormon and murder were relatively similar, right? Because I was like, Mormon, right? Murder, there we go. Right? Kind of like close but no cigar. So that was the concept there. The bald head no longer represented an ordinary movie theater. It represented political murders, and was an analogy for Abraham Lincoln being shot by John Wilkes Booth in a movie theater, because the bald eagle is a national emblem of America, which relates to government and politics. By the way, when I was doing this, I was hypnotized to think that meant taking my time, or scrunching my face, or I don't know. But they're sick and twisted, the people that are doing this to me. Let me go ahead and continue here. They hypnotized me to imagine President Donald Trump's back in a dark blue suit and his very broad shoulders, and how easy it would be to crack his back with my very large hands, because there was so much room in between his shoulder blades to apply the necessary amount of pressure and the right places when I needed to crack my back, causing me to envy how wide Donald Trump's back was, because it would be so easy to crack his back. The reason being is the compression from the fat. Well, you know, like my muscle, I was hypnotized to have my muscles tense so that I wouldn't be able to crack my back for pain relief. The meaning behind the hypnotic suggestion partially referred to a nightmare that I had from PTSD when I first started having PTSD nightmares back in 2016, where me and a friend were picking up my sleep specialist, or sleep doctor, and dropping him on his back over and over again, breaking his back, which was in terrifyingly graphic detail with obscene amounts of blood, and he told me, don't drink before you hurt someone, and don't drink after you hurt someone either. This is the most vivid and memorable PTSD nightmare I ever had. Anyway, so like, you know, I had medical malpractice in the past, and technically I still would, but, you know, I developed hyperventilation syndrome, and I would have broken the world record for hyperventilation syndrome. I was also hypnotized to think that's what my, you know, breaking my back meant, because I was breaking the world record for hyperventilation syndrome, and that I couldn't be sexy for breaking the world record for hyperventilation syndrome, because hyperventilating isn't exactly something that's very sexy. So moving on, so there's some hypnotic metaphors involving Democrats and then also back. Democrats, I was hypnotized to think that they were going to force me to involuntarily contract sexually transmitted diseases if I was a Democrat. I was hypnotized to think that the more I wanted to change the world, the more they were going to change my reproductive health and reproductive organs, making them unhealthy. I was also hypnotized to think this was a reference to a Ziggy Marley song called Change Your World, and a reference to the Obama campaign slogan, Change. Because the more I wanted to make political change, like Obama's slogan, the more they wanted to change my world, like the Ziggy Marley song, except that's not what the song is about, technically. I was also hypnotized to think that if I was a Democrat, that my sex life would be like a demo because I could try being a Democrat, but after I try it, I might not like it. One of the methods used to deter me from articulating speech was by hypnotizing me to feel back pain every time I attempted to speak clearly and fluently without excessive pauses, interruptions, or breaks in my speech as a method of punishing me for trying to. I was also hypnotized to feel back pain to conceal hypnotic commands of rigid movements, forceful and strenuous speech, and abnormal facial expressions. I was hypnotized to associate attempting to overcome the hypnotic speech impairment with a figure of speech rolling off my tongue. Because I was hypnotized to force my speech to roll off my tongue. Wait, what? See, and that's another thing that they did. They just try to twist my words around, right? Like they're trying to get my spine. Just like how they're trying to twist my spine. Sorry about that. They're sick, disgusting psychopaths. I was hypnotized to associate attempting to overcome the hypnotic speech impairment with this figure of speech rolling off my tongue because I was trying to force my speech to roll off my tongue. The figure of speech is a metaphor for words sounding well articulated like a ball rolling smoothly off your tongue. I was also hypnotized to spin my arms in a circle like this. Which was supposed to mean they were inhibiting my speech, and to think it meant rolling with the punches because of those small punching bags. Because I couldn't speak normally with the words rolling off my tongue. I was also hypnotized to think rolling with the punches meant Justin Bieber is beating me up about it, referring to Justin Bieber beating up G-Eazy for giving me STDs for diseasing G-Eazy's career by not liking G-Eazy's music enough during my movie, and referring to Justin Bieber beating up the social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center for abusing me with hypnosis. And also, there was another hypnotic metaphor used to add even more confusion to that, because there's context needed to understand what all that means, right? Because I didn't mention G-Eazy until now, so that's very confusing, right? I don't want to be you anymore hypnotic metaphor was used to add confusion with a tangential embedded loop or nested loop metaphor, because since they were going to abuse me so much with hypnosis that I wouldn't want to be myself anymore, they hypnotized me to act like I was them instead of myself, and so I could understand why it was phrased as Justin Bieber is beating me up about it, because I was hypnotized to act like I was them instead of myself, right? So if I was hypnotized to act like the social worker, right, then beating me up about it meant beating the social worker up about it. That's very confusing, right? Well, they did that intentionally. Moving on here. So that's why it was phrased as Justin Bieber is beating me up about it, so that I would be able to understand it without other people understanding it meant Justin Bieber is beating them up about it. I was also hypnotized to think rolling with the punches meant I was fighting the hypnosis and by trying to articulate my speech, and I was hypnotized to I was also hypnotized to think rolling with the punches meant I was fighting the hypnosis by trying to articulate my speech, and I was hypnotized to imagine punching a speed bag, which is those small punching bags, like the small hanging punching bags that you punch like that. That's why I was hypnotized to think this meant rolling with the punches, because it's similar to this. And this is actually commonly used sometimes in hypnotic inductions. But moving on from that, and I was hypnotized to imagine punching a speed bag, which is a small punching bag that is used by spinning arms in a circle to punch the bag. I was also hypnotized to think rolling off my tongue and rolling with the punches meant it was like I was doing ecstasy, because a slang term for ecstasy is rolling. The drug MDMA or ecstasy has been researched for marital counseling due to the drug's ability to promote feelings of empathy and understanding, which can also be described as providing a missing connection between couples that could help save marriages. I was also hypnotized to think having the ability to speak with words rolling off my tongue was like doing ecstasy, because people would be able to understand me and have empathy for me, and they didn't want people to understand me, or to be able to understand me, or to have empathy for me, because they were abusing me. Like I said, they didn't want anyone to interfere with them abusing me. I was also hypnotized to think the feeling of connection caused by ecstasy, reference to how the embedded loops of metaphors need to be connected to be understood. So, like that missing feeling of connection. Well, I mean, the confusion with the nested loops of metaphors, right? You have to get the entire story in order to understand what it means. There's missing context, there's a missing connection there, and it doesn't make sense. But with the entirety of the story and the entire context, then, there's the connection, and it's able to be understood and make sense. And I'm able to describe what they did to me and make sense instead of sounding crazy because I don't make sense. Okay, and I was also hypnotized to think this meant inhibiting my speech. By the way, just pointing that out. I was also hypnotized to think the feelings of connection caused by ecstasy, reference to how the embedded loops of metaphors need to be connected to be understood. So when I would say I was hypnotized to think ... it would typically be an incomplete hypnotic metaphor and in a nested loop of metaphors. So, it's like a part of a story within a larger story. It would typically be an incomplete hypnotic metaphor in an embedded loop of metaphors or a nested loop of metaphors. People would commonly assume I was insane because the metaphors are not literal, the metaphors are symbolic, and the metaphors are commonly embedded in loops or nested in loops, as well as the hypnosis and having my ability to speak resulting in my descriptions of metaphors seeming illogical. For example, I'd be consciously entertained and distracted with the visualizations they associated with the metaphors, like imagining a punching bag, so that I wouldn't question hypnotic commands like spinning my arms in a circle walking down the street, or that Justin Bieber was fighting for me. When in all reality, they did that to... I'm not entirely sure why they had me do that. I think it was to consume my time. Oh, wait, I think that was to make sure that I would... That's a longer story in and of itself. But they wanted to make sure that I went to this one specific person's house, and they didn't want me to move out of state or to, think rationally or logically. They needed to occupy my time and then get me to their desired destination to control me. Regardless, explaining embedded loops of metaphors can be extremely difficult. Oh, and also that Justin Bieber was fighting for me. Basically, so that I would talk about that, right? Like when I would say Justin Bieber was beating me up about it, right? And without the understanding that when I said Justin Bieber is beating me up about it, I meant Justin Bieber is beating them up about it. Because I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm being abused, but they're trying to pin the blame on me. Since it would be a good thing, right? I'm like, yo, this guy's actually going to help me out, right? We can help each other out because there's, they told me some other things that involved medical conditions that were very unethical, to say the least. I don't think I necessarily need to go into detail. I think, just saying I believe people will take it at face value and would be sufficient enough to get the point across. Repressing a lot of these things from my memory as well. But moving on, I have to finish. that was a big distraction. Explaining embedded loops of metaphors can be extremely difficult, resulting in me talking in circles, attempting to explain it quickly, especially with hypnotic speech impairment. So it's not likely I can make a 1 to 10 minute video and successfully explain the embedded loops of metaphors. For example, if I'm explaining an embedded loop with 30 different metaphors, I'd have to explain each metaphor in 2 seconds or less in order to make a 1 minute video. I was hypnotized to think Democrat meant Democrac or Domocrac because the rigid, intense muscle movements concealed by being hypnotized to feel back pain. Right, so like I would be hypnotized to move rigid, and then they hypnotized me to feel back pain, so that it would seem like I was in pain, like I was moving rigid and slowly because I had a back problem, when it's actually because I'm hypnotized and I'm being tortured and abused with hypnosis. And the movements were comparable to robotic movements or the dance called the robot. I was also hypnotized to think that breaking my back meant inhibiting my speech. I was hypnotized to think Democrat meant demograph because they tried to limit the demographs my videos would be reaching to prevent public exposure of torture, abuse, and organized crime by making the content inappropriate and graphic to prevent children from watching. Hypnotized to imagine my spine as a row of nuts tied on a string and cracking them when I cracked my back, or like a firecracker when I crack my back. Firecrackers are explosives tied together on a string, and firecrackers will crack each explosive in a successive order. Hypnotized to imagine embedded loop metaphors as a series of hypnotic metaphors tied together on a string like a firecracker. At first, I looked nuts explaining the embedded loop metaphors they used until the embedded loop metaphors are connected and they become mind-blowing. By the way, Justin Bieber wasn't the only one interrupting real quick with the intervening. I also wanted to mention Hailey Bieber actually also being involved, and I don't know how to, it's a long, complicated story, but I just also wanted to include that because this is kind of really, involves a lot of I got threatened because of medical malpractice and exposing the government for abusing medical patients by having marijuana illegal. When marijuana has medical benefits, so the thing is, there was ample motivation, from the people that would be in control of these types of things. I got threatened for exposing, government corruption and propaganda. Because if our government wasn't corrupt, why is marijuana still illegal federally? Over half the country has rebelled and legalized it in the states, rebelling against the federal laws. And anyways, finish. Mind-blowing can be a hypnotic metaphor to firecrackers. By the way, when I was talking about the propaganda and exposing the government and everything along those lines, I was hypnotized to imagine Hailey Bieber asking, well, what does this have to do with me? And the problem is, it's, I'll give this as an example. They threatened that if they couldn't kill my family and friends, that they were going to kill innocent people. Because it would be easier for them to get away with it. And I apologize. So these interruptions too, so tangential, missing context, right? Talking about Justin and Hailey Bieber. The problem being is it could make it seem as if my sanity could be questionable. But if you watch the entirety of the video and the hypnotic metaphors, other than, talking, interrupting, because I was hypnotized to actually talk about them just to try to make me look insane and crazy. Moving on, I'm trying to speak so much. I'm trying to speak. So anyways, at first I looked nuts. Wait. I'll just read from there. At first I looked nuts explaining the embedded loops of metaphors they used until the embedded loop metaphors are connected and they become mind-blowing, right? Because like, that doesn't make any sense. Whoa, what? That makes sense. That's a difference. Mind-blowing can be a hypnotic metaphor to firecrackers because comprehending the embedded loops of metaphors is explosively mind-blowing. Hypnotized to write small, illegible, rewrite, and frequently erase to conceal hypnotic commands, as well as squint while reading because the squinting would cause bags to develop under my eyes as a method of making me appear sleep-deprived when I wasn't. I was hypnotized to think that the vertebrae in my spine were like morals because they were like uneven orbs. I was hypnotized to think of the orbs as pearls and orals because they were inhibiting my speech. I was also hypnotized to associate the metaphor with my dog Jewel because they hit me in my jewels by harming my reproductive health. To loop the hypnotic metaphors back together like a loop in a bow, pearls are valuable jewels and metaphorically could be considered values. Looping back to morals because morals are also values, which is why they told me they were going to inhibit my moral oral. So I was also hypnotized to feel back pain too when I was talking about that. I'm making a really big deal about how much they're abusing me and torturing me because they're sick, disgusting people. I mean, it is actually a really big deal what they're doing too. Like, it's my constitutional right to speak. So, to loop the, wait, hold on a second. Okay, so to loop the hypnotic metaphors back together like a loop in a bow, pearls are valuable jewels and metaphorically could be considered values, looping back to morals because morals are values, which is why they told me they were going to inhibit my moral oral. The values could also relate back to the quality. Sorry about that. The values could also relate back to the quality over quantity hypnotic metaphor because as a form of financial exploitation, I was hypnotized to buy brand name products to get our country out of debt. By the way, I really want to point this out. This is a long video. 1:07:46. Well, anyways, I was hypnotized to think that more was going to happen to Justin Bieber and Hailey Bieber. I don't know why. The last time that happened, I didn't write down what time it was when I recorded the video. So I'm doing that right now as a just in case thing. Oh wow, just in case. Trying to open a case, right? Cracking a case. This is ridiculous. Yes. 107, 108. Okay, I'm going to do 107 to 109. Sorry to interrupt that. I don't have the time to remake the video. I was hypnotized to buy brand name products to get our country out of debt because it added value to American made products because we value quality over quantity. I was also hypnotized to think of when I was hypnotized to think several people were taken hostage and that this related back to the death threats because it was about the quality of the hostages over the quantity of the hostages. I was hypnotized to think the vertebrae in my spine were like morals because they were my family and friends, or like my family jewels because they were valuable. I was also hypnotized to think of pearls because one of my dog's eyes is a bluish white which resembles a pearl and is the reason my dog is named Jewel. Inside my mind was a black box that kept something special that I value, like a treasure chest that I kept my treasures or morals and values safe in that was repressed from my memory until now. The black box was an unconscious symbol to a secret and a mystery. Cracking my back or cracking a chestnut open was a metaphor for cracking the treasure chest open. Upon cracking the treasure chest open, I found some valuable treasures or family jewels. I found my family and friends and death threats to my family and friends. The reason I was hypnotized to crack the small of my back, which is the part of the spinal cord located directly in the middle, horizontally and vertically in between my shoulder blades, is because in order to crack the small of my back, I had to squeeze my shoulder blades together and extend my chest out forward, which was like cracking my chestnuts open because I had to push my chest out to crack it. I was also hypnotized to think of SpongeBob because they depicted a clam with a pearl inside, and that the chest was the clam and the pearl was the death threats to my family and friends. I was also hypnotized to think of opening the chest filled with death threats to my family and friends as me opening a briefcase of criminal investigations, or me opening a case against my perpetrators. You know, cracking the case, right? Anyways, so like, I'm going to actually, that's the video, but I'm going to add a little bit more. This really went overboard, but I want to make sure that it's easily understandable, this part, right? Because like at the end of the video, it's like, hey, well, try to make any accusations that I'm crazy or whatever you want. But, this part of the hypnotic metaphor is a little bit more, undeniable, right? Alright, let's see here. So I'm going to start with... Hypnosis is really inhibiting me right now. Okay, the values could also relate back to the quality over quantity hypnotic metaphor. Oh, wait. Okay, this is actually a little bit longer than I thought. Okay. Hypnotized to write small, illegible, rewrite, and frequently erase to conceal hypnotic commands, as well as squint while reading because the squinting would cause bags to develop under my eyes as a method of making me appear sleep deprived when I wasn't. I was hypnotized to think that the vertebrae of my spine were like morals because they were like uneven orbs. I was hypnotized to think of the orbs as pearls and orals because they were inhibiting my speech. I was also hypnotized to associate the metaphor with my dog Jewel because they hit me in my jewels by harming my reproductive health. To loop the hypnotic metaphors back together like a loop in a bow, pearls are valuable jewels and metaphorically could be considered values, looping back to morals because morals are values, which is why they told me they were going to inhibit my moral oral. And like I said, I think I mentioned, that being the speech that I wrote regarding the meaning of life being to help people. The values could also relate back to the quality over quantity hypnotic metaphor because as a form of financial exploitation, I was hypnotized to buy brand name products to get our country out of debt because it added value to American-made products because we value quality over quantity. So quality over the quantity is the key words here. I was also hypnotized to think of when I was hypnotized to think several people were taken hostage, and that this related back to the death threats because it was about the quality of the hostages over the quantity of the hostages. So there's more to do with that. That's a hypnotic metaphor in itself, but I was hypnotized to think the vertebrae in my spine were like morals because they were my family and friends, or like my family jewels because they were valuable. I was also hypnotized to think of the pearls because one of my dog's eyes is a bluish white, which resembles a pearl and is the reason my dog is named Jewel. Before I get to the black box, so sorry, the hypnosis interrupted me again, and I'm hypnotized to tense up because of the hypnosis too. I need to get this done quickly. Sorry about that. I'm being tortured. Oh, so yeah, the quality of or quantity of the hostages. It's kind of like well, I mean, even though they didn't actually have anybody taken hostage, it doesn't invalidate my credibility. Simply because of the fact that it's not about the quantity of the hostages; it's about the quality of the hostages, right? Do you think that's something that I just make up? And then let's go ahead and continue here. That's what I mean is like it's not something that is just fabricated or nonsensical. It makes sense, right? Because if they were strangers, right, that would be like quantity of hostages. If it was like my immediate family members, right, that would be quality of hostages, typically, right? Well, I mean, if that makes sense, then it makes sense why they hypnotized me to think that a lot of people were taken hostage when they weren't. So it's the fact that I'm hypnotized that gives me the credibility. And they lied to me a lot with the hypnosis, but at the same time, that doesn't negate the fact that that does not discredit my sanity and credibility in and of itself, just because I'm hypnotized. And so they could tell me things, right? And just because it was a lie, right? Well, oftentimes I word things like I was hypnotized to think this, right? So when I say something like that also doesn't necessarily mean that I believe, in what they told me. It just means that this is what they told me. Inside my mind was a black box that kept something special that I value, like a treasure chest that I kept my treasures or morals and values safe in, that was repressed from my memory until now. So the black box was an unconscious symbol to a secret and a mystery. So the reason for that is in a lot of hypnotic metaphors, they'll use things like symbols. There are things like unconscious symbols. So an unconscious symbol can be like fog or like a forest, right? Because you can't necessarily see like everything right out in front of you, right? There, it implies that it's something is like concealed. So the black box is an unconscious symbol. Cracking my back or cracking a chestnut open was a metaphor for cracking the treasure chest open. Upon cracking the treasure chest open, I found some valuable treasures or family jewels. I found my family and friends and death threats to my family and friends. The reason I was hypnotized to crack the small of my back, which is the part of the spinal cord located directly in the middle, horizontally and vertically in between my shoulder blades, is because in order to crack the small of my back, I had to squeeze my shoulder blades together and extend my chest out forward, which was like cracking my, quote, chestnuts. So, to clarify what that looks like, it's like doing this, right? To crack my back. And, I tried to crack it, but it didn't exactly crack the way it was supposed to necessarily. Kind of like an incomplete crack, but regardless as such, I'm not going to hurt myself trying to show the example, but you understand what I mean by the part of your spine right here in the back extends your, because it's like when the vertebrae crack, they're like chestnuts, right? Because they're cracking and it's in the chest area. That's, so that's an example where what does chestnuts have to do with death threats? That doesn't make any sense, right? It's completely illogical, but then, oh, wait. Now it all loops back together with this long, elaborate story, and it makes sense. And I've been gaslighted a lot, so I'm really, you know, quite irritated with how much people have tried to antagonize me by calling me insane, because these are the people that I've enabled. My abusers, not only to abuse me, but to kill, murder, and abuse countless people. And then sorry, like I was hypnotized also. Like, I'm getting really like irritated right now. I'm trying to finish. The hypnosis isn't hitting me. Because I had to push my chest out to crack it. I was also hypnotized to think of SpongeBob because they depicted a clam with a pearl inside, and that the chest was the clam and the pearl was the death threats to my family and friends. I was also hypnotized to think of opening the chest filled with death threats to my family and friends as me opening a briefcase of criminal investigations, or me opening a case against my perpetrators. Dang. I was supposed to also write down another part where repeated once, but anyways, I'm gonna end the video now. This has taken more of my time than I was able to afford to spend on it, and I feel nauseated from the hypnosis. Sorry about that. So like this video is like when I was sorry about that. Like when I interrupted my video, to go off on those tangents, that like ruined my video, because I had like one take to do this, and with explaining something that didn't have the necessary context I needed, it's kind of like hey, people might try to invalidate, discredit my credibility because of that, or the video is longer than it should be. The hypnosis has been used to abuse and torture me. The hypnosis has not been used for my benefit. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end the video. And for whatever reason, I'm still hypnotized to think about Justin Bieber. It kind of gets me worried, because seriously, this happened before, and I wasn't able to find the clip, but I remember, for example, I mentioned, I might not be able to completely stop it from happening, whatever it might be, because I was cued to think that something was going to happen to him before, and then don't try to take away my face value, right? But I wasn't able to find the clip where I specifically stated that on Facebook Live, but I remember talking about it in the middle of one of my videos. Unless they edited my video somehow, which I'd have to really carefully examine, and everything along those lines. But this is torture me. It's inhibiting my ability to speak right now. This is torture and abuse. That's why it's also inhibiting my ability to speak, because try to make me spend too much time talking about somebody else. That I don't want to talk about them for no reason. You know what I mean? But I'm not just gonna let them tell me about something, about somebody being in danger or something, and then let it happen. I remember I said you know, like I might not be able to prevent it because I don't know what it is specifically. You know, and I also remember mentioning Raynaud's phenomenon. And because I thought Ramsay Hunt, I was like, I don't know what exactly it was, right? But I should probably try to write that down. And I was hypnotized to think Raynaud's phenomenon instead of Ramsay Hunt. I said it anyways. I wasn't intending to. Because this video is recorded after it happened, so it's not evidence of anything. You know, it's just kind of like I'm talking about him, and like, this is, I'm trying to use this as evidence for a court case, right? So, let me go ahead and present, you know, some e-entertainment articles, right, for like some TNZ stuff, right, to convict these people, right? If I can use it as evidence, then I'm gonna use it as evidence. But like if I can't and it's not gonna help anything, so it was justice. That's right. Because if I couldn't prevent it from happening, right? Well, I mean, you know, doing my absolute best to do everything, but the hypnosis was repressing it from my memory. Well, you know, the least I could do would be at least mention that I was hypnotized to think about it, right? So that if it ended up happening, I could get him justice for it. You know, in the very least, so that they wouldn't be able to get away with it. And of course, hopefully that would deter them from doing it at all, right? Because they were like, oh, well, I mean, if we can't get away with it, right? You know, we're not going to do that, right? But not only did they do it anyways, I can't find the video clip, even though the videos were on Facebook Live, and you know, like those can't exactly be edited. But you know, I'm not entirely sure, like you know, what web developers can exactly do. For example, starting to sound very preposterous here. To the point where I wouldn't even want to like upload the video, right, because of that. But I'm gonna have to upload it anyways, and that's what I got. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.